Europe. So please put your hands together and welcome him to the App Promotion Summit USA virtual stage. Over to you, Dave.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for attending, and James and the APS team, thanks for hosting. We have a great presentation for you today to talk about the evolution of ASO and some new things that we're seeing about the algorithms in the App Store and Play Store, as well as some practices that, frankly, people just need to leave behind, but for some reason, everyone is still talking about them. So let's get into it, and we can dive in from there. And James, really quick a point before I begin. I cannot actually see the QA panel. When I click Q&A, nothing pops up.
Okay, you may want to hover over it.
Not quite sure why. Oh, there we go. You know why?
Okay, well, I think if someone asks a question, it might sort of pop up. So yeah, we'll let you. If not, I'll come on board at the end and we'll do it. Yeah, great.
All right, sounds good. I will hit resume share, and we will go from there. Actually, it's not liking that. Give me 1 second so I can fix this. For some reason, when I tried to get the QA, it didn't like that. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, I think one of the things that are very important for everyone to keep in mind is that App Store optimization is not app SEO. A lot of people refer to it as SEO for apps, and while the goals are similar, what you actually have to do to achieve great result is not. People really need to focus on how to extend visibility beyond keywords that you're simply targeting and how that works. Understand that ASO and keyword metadata optimization as it relates to ASO to the App Store and Play Store is like a big A/B test. They're experimenting with you on keywords, and sometimes you'll rank for a keyword one day and not the next, and you need to understand why that happens. And it's important to also understand how people search in the stores, why suggestions, why user behavior is so different in an app store versus the way people behave on the web. And finally, when you're doing testing, when you're working with keywords, why experimenting with just a few new keywords might lose steam so quickly. One, it's important to understand the app stores are e-commerce stores. We're not optimizing for the web. And every algorithm that Apple and Google has built has more in common with Amazon.com e-commerce and the way that platform works than the way web search works. And if you look at every element of the App Store and indeed the Google Play Store experience, it very much mirrors the type of experience that you're having when you browse a top e-commerce website like Amazon. And there's an important reason for that. If you look at the web is an experience where people are searching for information. They're going to research. Web queries tend to be very information-based. Queries within e-commerce in the App Store and Play Store tend to be based around products and features and services that users are searching for. Phrases and the long tail are extremely important within App Store optimization and the world of mobile.
Hi, Dave. Sorry to interrupt. We can only see sort of half your screen at the moment, so I don't know if maybe you want to just re-share the screen or.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Let me try again. Okay. So it says I'm screen sharing.
Yep, that seems to be okay. Great. Okay. Yep. Brilliant. Yeah, it's working. Thanks, Dave.
Strange. Sorry about that. All right. So next, we're going to talk about, frankly, some myths that are out there that actually can hurt your ASO. But if you search online and if you're talking casually for ASO advice, people are still talking about these things as if they are facts or as if they still have a positive impact on ASO. Now, first, the number one thing that I want to talk about is how ASO is a process. Whenever we receive inquiries from clients, whenever we're talking at shows, one of the things we sometimes hear is that when you're doing ASO, you do kind of an initial setup, and then after that, there's not much work on a month-to-month basis. That's not true. The reality is if you're doing web SEO, yes, there's a lot of work you have to do to put together your website and do your on and off page SEO. And after that, there's less work. But that's web. In mobile, it's very different. And optimizing once is not enough. Every time you update your keywords and metadata, Apple and Google are going to crawl your metadata for about 3 to 4 weeks. And if you have a tool that can actually detect that process, you know when Apple and Google have finished crawling you. After that, it's time to update again. And whether that update is leveraging knowledge about what worked in the last optimization and making adjustments, or making larger changes, it's important to continue that process because you want to create an environment where Apple and Google never stop crawling your app. The moment they stop crawling your app, they stop learning, the experimentation stops within search, and instead of expanding your spider web of reach, it kind of stagnates over time. So that's a very important part of the process to keep in mind. One other thing that we have heard recently, is only screenshots matter for conversion, and other elements have less of an impact. That also is not true. We have an example of some icon testing that we did for a client here, and the truth is the icon is extremely important. In iOS it matters, in Google Play perhaps it matters even more, because in the Google Play experience, when users are browsing the search results, the icon is the only creative that people see before they have to click through to your app page, and it needs to be compelling. When you look at some of this testing that we ran for a product called Match to Win, literally moving from the first set of icons to the second set of icons resulted in 100% increase in conversion to download. The next test that we ran was a further 20% increase, and then just changing the color in the background resulted in a further 2% increase. And then it's important to consider seasonality and other events that are going on in the store. When you look at icons in particular, a lot of questions always come up about whether seasonality and making incremental changes to cater to seasons matter with assets like icons. And they really do. Just, when we experimented for Halloween, for example, with this app, we were able to get a 5% lift in the 45-day period around Halloween because we were making these seasonal changes to the icons, which is important. Now, it's also important to look to the future and understand, how ASO is evolving and how the algorithms are evolving. Sorry, I don't know why this is sharing this way. Give me 1 second. I think I have another error on my side. I apologize. Bring your shared window to the front. I see what happened. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Now it should be working. All right. So the next thing that I want to touch on, all right, sorry, I'm just getting to the right slide. So the next thing that I want to touch on caters really around search optimization and conversion optimization. The slides here are a little different order because I had a slightly older version of the deck up. So in terms of search optimization is extremely powerful from an ASO standpoint. A lot of people, when they're running A/B testing and when they're thinking of conversion optimization, they're thinking creative optimizations have a much bigger impact than search optimization. The truth is, search can be powerful, but it's powerful only if you implement a cadence, as I mentioned earlier, where you're constantly feeding Apple and Google new information, and also when you're using the right strategy and the right tools for the optimization process. A lot of people, when they're thinking about ASO, one of the things that we hear is we hear, well, does a narrow focus help us? You know, is it better to target a few keywords instead of a broad range of keywords in the App Store? The truth is, it doesn't really help you. Apple and Google build relationships between keywords and phrases and related terms. And the broader you build an optimization, understanding how Apple and Google might merchandise you through the store, the better you're going to perform over time. You know, generally changing one or two keywords or doing a very limited or focused optimization doesn't really help any app that's at scale. But when you can move a large number of keywords at one time and understand how the merchandising process in the App Store and Play Store works, you have a much better result. If you look at all the successful apps in the store today, they generally rank very broadly. And you know, successful apps in the store can rank for thousands of keywords. These are just some examples of apps that we work with. Some large technology companies, large retailers that we work with, some more independent apps that we work with that rank for up to 3,500, close to 3,500 keywords in the App Store. And that's possible because of iteration that happens over time, because the once and done strategy was not applied here. So the other thing that I want to talk about just is keyword indexation, and we covered that previous slide earlier. A lot of people talk about keyword indexation and how quickly should we update our keywords. Well, Apple and Google take about 30 to 45 days on average for keywords to index from the date of deployment. You don't want to update too quickly, because if you do that, you end up spinning your wheels. You end up in a position where you rank for different keywords over time, but not more keywords. If you update not frequently enough, you essentially have these large periods of time where Apple and Google aren't crawling you at all, and so you're not able to advance. So it's important to time your optimization. The other kind of important point to really drive home is that not all tools are equal, and there's some important warning signs to look for when you're deciding what data are we going to use to base our decisions from. And this has a lot to do not only with the data behind things like keyword volume, but also the methodology of an optimization. Number one, you know, not all keyword data and search data is valid for ASO. Using data from sources that are not truly organic in the App Store can really hold you back. And a lot of people actually still talk about like looking at web trends to make keyword choices. And there's only 20% overlap between web and App Store search trends. And again, that's because the App Store and Play Store are so much like e-commerce engines, whereas in the web world, people are using more information-based search queries to get to where they're going. You know, one solution that some people have come up with is looking at Apple search ads data, but that also doesn't really work. And Apple will actually tell you not to use the search ads data for ASO. And the best analogy I can come up with is it's kind of like investing long in the stock market, but taking advice from day traders. You know, search ads data is generally very short term. It relies on the idea you're going to be able to change what you're bidding on at a moment's notice on a daily basis. And you can't do that with ASO. You're not going to, you know, in the world of Apple, for example, release a new build of your app every day to make changes to your keywords. The other challenge that we see that is simply not true in terms of the way ASO works and evaluating what keywords to select is judging what people refer to as difficulty. Most difficulty scores that are out there in most tools look at factors like the number of competing apps on a particular keyword. And unfortunately, the number of apps that rank for a keyword have very little to do with how difficult a keyword is to rank for. A successful keyword ranking strategy involves looking at the relevance for a particular keyword, understanding whether people who search for that keyword are likely to click on your app and download it, and understanding what conversion factors are working for your competitors at a keyword level. Because ultimately, conversion optimization happens not only at the page level, it also happens at the search level, which we'll talk about in a second. So, you know, it's important not to think about what keywords are easiest to rank for alone. You also have to understand what do we want to target that are the best keywords for us, the most relevant keywords for us? When you define an easy keyword, there can be no universal difficulty. Whenever we're looking at tools for ASO and we see that difficulty scores are the same for every app, regardless of what app is loaded in, we know that relevancy is not being considered as a factor. And so that difficulty score isn't really relevant to the optimization process. So that's a very important point when you're thinking about what keywords to experiment with and what keywords perhaps to leave for later. The other thing that I think is important to understand is that Apple and Google are still a black box today. They don't provide impressions and installs per keyword. And unfortunately, because Apple and Google are such a black box, there are a lot of tools that are developing their own algorithms to calculate or try to calculate how many downloads and installs might come from a particular keyword in the store. Unfortunately, it's not being disclosed to the user that that data is an estimate and it is not a fact. It is not data coming from the App Store and Play Store. And generally speaking, when you look at some of these tools and how they calculate this kind of data using their own algorithms, essentially they're just looking at the keywords that you're targeting and tracking, which is a challenge to begin with because you may be ranking for things and keywords beyond what you're targeting based on how Apple and Google experiment with you. They then take their understanding of volume for those keywords, which could be flawed depending on where they get their data. If a tool is getting data only from Apple search ads or only from web search, the basis of what the size of the opportunity for a keyword is not correct. And then the tool looks at where you rank for said terms. So, obviously if you rank number 1, you're going to get more visibility than if you rank number 10. And then they scale that. They come up with a random scale, call it 1 through 10,000 or whatever the range is. And then they tell you that's your volume potential for that keyword. And so, breaking that down, you can see that that has very little to do with the understanding of where your traffic comes from. And one of the things that we always advise partners to do when they're confused about what they're looking at in a third-party tool is we advise them to, if they have a Google Play app, look in the Google Play console, look at their global search data, because Google Play actually provides you a glimpse of the top handful of keywords that you might be getting traffic from. And if that data doesn't match what your tool is telling you, you really need to be looking for another tool or not relying on that data to make your decisions. So, again, the implication that that information actually comes from Apple and Google is very misleading. And so it's always important to kind of question what you're looking at and understand what is an estimate versus what is real data that comes from Apple and Google. So now I want to share a brief case study. And this case study focuses on an app that GummyCube works with using more of a merchandising-based optimization methodology. So looking at all of the keywords an app ranks for, creating that kind of cadence with keyword and metadata updates. And I like this example because McAfee Mobile Security is an app that had previously been optimized by another agency for more than a year. It's also an app that is very, very well known. It's a very, very well known brand. And so it has a lot of brand recognition and it picks up downloads because of that brand recognition. What we were able to do is above and beyond that. Without search ads, without influence from any other kind of third party or paid channel, we were able to grow keyword visibility by 31%, search impressions by almost 30%, and in a very short period of time, a couple of months, increase organic search units by almost 10%. And through A/B testing, we improved conversion 15%, looking at kind of all of the factors that I spoke about earlier. Now, the reason this is important is because this is an app that was optimized, as I mentioned, for more than a year. It was optimized using some of these other tools and some of these other methodologies. And in a very short period of time, switching the method that was used to optimize and switching the data that we used to make choices to data that was more accurate, we found more growth for this app. So it's not incremental. It can be very significant when we make these arguments. Now, I mentioned that previous app we had worked with and optimized without the influence of paid search, without the influence of search ads. And a lot of people like to talk about how search ads or paid search campaigns can help drive ASO. There are some truths to that, and there are some misconceptions that I think are important to talk about. The first is something I mentioned earlier, and that is simply that search ads data is not the right data to use for ASO. When you look at search ads as a platform, there are a lot of good things about search ads. There are a lot of good things about Google App campaigns as well. However, this is not data to use for ASO. Keywords take time to index in the ASO world. In a search ads campaign, there's a one-to-one relationship between keywords you bid on and keywords you actually appear on in the store. And in the ASO world, in the organic world, like I said, it's a big A/B test. And every time you update your keywords and metadata, you're stimulating merchandising that goes far beyond the keywords that you only target. And so literally using search ads data and treating ASO as if it's a paid search activity is the wrong thing to do. The other important point is that when you think about how these two platforms work together or don't work together, media buying and ASO are not the same thing. One of the things that we have heard from many media agencies out there is, oh, you want to do ASO, just run a search ads campaign. And that isn't true. And it's very misleading because a lot of these companies are actually compensated by their media spend. So they're advantaged for saying that. Paid search is an excellent user acquisition channel, but running an Apple search ads campaign is not the same thing as managing App Store optimization. And in fact, ASO is what drives the success of paid search. ASO increases your relevancy. It establishes click and conversion data that opens up more share of voice on keywords when you do run a search ads campaign. And it can actually drive down the cost of search ads as your relevancy and conversion increases. The other important thing within search ads is that algorithms do crawl your descriptions for search ads. In the organic world, your description is not crawled for Apple, but in the paid world, in the search ads world, it is. So the way you write that description is very important. And once you do all these things, right? Once you establish all of these things, you can scale within a search ads campaign. And those clicks that you get within a search ads campaign can improve your organic ranking, but you can't run that in a vacuum. These two things do work together. And we've seen, in the ASO world, for many of our clients that do run search ads and kind of set things up correctly, it can have an impact on your rankings that can be very, very meaningful. It will speed up your indexation for organic keywords. And if you're able to scale that campaign on keywords that matter to you, it will incrementally improve your organic rankings. Now, we've talked a lot about search. Next, I want to talk a little bit about conversion optimization and how critical creative assets are. So, number one, it's important to always be testing. We frequently work with partners who always have a debate between brand marketing teams and performance marketing teams about the creatives in the store. And some people still view the App Store as if it's kind of a box on shelf product where once a year you refresh your creative and it looks like, the creative everywhere else, wherever your product might be sold. It's necessary to create a balance between the need for brand and the need for performant creative in the App Store and Play Store. Iteration of creatives is extremely important. Iteration not only affects how everything all the traffic that you send to your store listing converts, it also affects your actual rankings and placements in the store. Apple and Google are constantly gathering click-through data and conversion data everywhere your app is listed. And that click-through data and conversion data affects your visibility in the store, whether you continue to be featured on lists and how well you rank for keywords in the store. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is the store listing is only half the story. Apple and Google have incredibly different UI and UX. And at the end of the day, that has to be taken into account when you're doing A/B testing. In the Apple App Store, Apple has told us that 80% of their organic users actually download straight from the get buttons in the search result and the browse experience in their store, and they never go to the store listing. With Google, almost everyone has to take that extra click and that extra step and visit your store listing before downloading. So that's going to impact conversion. The user experience is different, and what users are able to see before they make that critical decision to download is different across both platforms. And just to kind of illustrate that stark contrast, in the Apple world, all of your screenshots are visible. It's a very creative experience. We've done a lot of research, and the average user in the Apple App Store, as they're searching, gives a user about 6 seconds as they're scrolling through the search results before they either scroll to the next app or decide to download. In the search funnel, the experience is also very different. With Google, people really only see your icons for the most part. That's why icons really impact that top of the funnel click-through rate in a big way on the Google Play Store. So it's important to keep these things in mind as you're thinking about your testing strategies. The other thing that might affect how your app ranks in the store as it relates to conversion optimization is simply that different apps are ranking for the same keywords. The algorithms of the App Store and Play Store are very different. And when you're thinking about your conversion optimization strategy, your creative strategy, it's important to look at what apps, what content is appearing for each of those search queries that you care most about. Your store listing, again, important to test, but paying attention to how you might convert in the search result versus other apps that are ranking are important. And as you can see, across Apple and Google, there can be very different search results for the same keyword. And that's what you're competing against at the top of the funnel. So in terms of case study, we've done a lot of work looking at conversion optimization across a number of different assets. As I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people focus on their screenshots a lot, but maybe not focus on the icons so much, or in this case, not focus on how metadata might impact your conversion. Sephora is one of our clients. We did a lot of A/B testing with them, and one of the first things that we did with Sephora is help align their messaging with the way users were actually searching in the store. And we did that in all of their metadata, but in particular, we ran an A/B test on their short description. And just by changing the first 2 sentences of their short description, we were able to test out to as much as a 44% improvement in conversion, which is huge. And it proves that, when you really understand how people are searching and what they're searching for, and you align your metadata with that language and with that information, you can achieve really great results. So metadata is for keywords, of course, but it's also a powerful conversion factor. Now, how do we test? There are a lot of external A/B testing platforms that exist. I'm not going to name them all. GummyCube has one called SplitCube, where you can essentially emulate an App Store listing or a Google search listing, drive some paid traffic into different variants, and understand how users convert. But when you're thinking about the conversion optimization process, paid and organic traffic don't behave the same way. And so these external optimization platforms, are not as accurate when you're trying to optimize for organic conversion in the store. When people are in the store, they're experiencing a competitive environment. They're looking at your app versus competitors. They're being exposed to a lot of factors outside of just what your store listing looks like. And it's important to think about, how to leverage Google experiments, how to leverage things like search ads creative set testing in combination with platforms like SplitCube, because you want to be able to separate the channel that you're trying to test and the user behaviors that might differ from one channel to another in order to achieve results that are accurate.
Hi, Dave.
So,
sorry, quick one. We're getting a few notification sound. I don't know if it's your email or Something sort
That's
of
strange.
pinging.
I have muted everything,
Or is it your
which said it was
phone?
muted. I manually did that.
Um, hmm.
Thanks for that.
Oh, you got it? Great. All right.
So,
Yep.
ASO is important for apps that have existed in the store for a long time, as we demonstrated with McAfee and a few other case studies. It's also important for apps that are new to the store. There's no app where ASO is not an important factor. We've worked with apps large or small. Many apps, we've worked with from the point that they were 3 people in a garage and now they're top 10 apps in the store. And it's important to think about ASO in stages. The things that are important for apps that are very new to the store that are going to move the needle can be different than things that are important for apps that are extremely large, like LinkedIn and Sephora and McAfee and others. You've got to get the engine started. You've got to make sure that you have visibility, that you have statistical traffic to run A/B tests, and how to drive that in the first place. So it's important to have different strategies for apps that are new to the store versus apps that have been in the store for a very long time. But ASO generally still applies. You know, I used a match to win case study earlier, just looking at icons. But there were actually a lot of things that we did together with the match to win app to improve their optimization in the store. And this is an app that we worked with from day one. It didn't have any traction or visibility when we started working with it. So we really had to focus on increasing the store presence, getting that motor running. And it was a challenging app because the match 3 category is very competitive. The sweepstakes category is very competitive. And what we really wanted to do was we wanted to provide a broad optimization that would build a very, very large footprint where we'd be able to understand where the app would index well at a conversion level, not just on the store listing, but also within keywords in the store. And then drive visibility by focusing on where the app converted well at the top of the funnel. The optimization was very successful, and we're talking about an optimization that was able to achieve results in hundreds of keywords over the first several months of optimization. We grew top 5 visibility 524% using, again, this more e-commerce based methodology of optimization. Organic search impressions grew nearly 200%, and app unit growth grew 700% at very large scale. We're not talking about a small number of downloads and a large percentage. And through the work that we did from conversion optimization, not just with the icons, but with screenshots as well, we were able to boost conversion by 176%. So even for new apps, ASO works incredibly well. So, through all these examples that I've provided and some case studies, ASO has evolved a lot over the last several years. And it's important to adapt to new methodologies based on learnings about the way the App Store and Google Play Store work today versus the way that we may have thought they work yesterday. The old methodology, the old view of ASO, where it's about picking one keyword at a time, or where it's only about your creative as it appears in the search result, isn't really the most effective method for ASO anymore, and it can be very limiting. And it's important to keep in mind, if you're doing keyword and metadata optimization, if you're looking at optimizing, your creatives, if you're not seeing a lot of success, you should also question the tools that you use, not just the value of ASO. We've worked with very large apps. LinkedIn, for example, a great example of an app that we worked with that was optimized by another agency for a very long time. We increased their downloads by hundreds of percent. We increased their share of voice in search ads by more than 30% by aligning ASA and ASO work. And this is an app that was considered very well optimized before we got our hands on it. So don't accept that there's a glass ceiling, and don't accept that what you have done so far with the tools that you're using is the best that you can do. So thank you for your time. I appreciate everyone coming here and sharing some time with us to chat about ASO. Whenever we're doing these presentations, I always want to highlight some new things, and I always want to get people thinking in different ways about the ASO process. At GummyCube, we're fortunate in that we not only help people optimize their apps, but we have an incredible engineering team that builds technology every day. And so we see what's going on inside the app stores, and we see what's going on the execution side. That gives us a lot of insights that, a lot of other folks, at least we haven't seen surfacing.
Great, thanks, Dave. I think we're going to take some questions now. So normally we'd like to get into them as we go, but you can see the Q&A box, but now we can. So let's blast through a few questions. And Eric is asking, how were you able to attribute the 5% lift to the icon for the Halloween season? Was there any seasonality there? Was there any increase in conversion from install to page view in aggregate, or was it for organic only?
Yeah, so that's a good question. When we looked at the lift from the seasonal icon, we did consider overall seasonality in the category that app was in, and how seasonality impacted general lift across other apps in that category, and we were able to filter that out. We also looked at historical conversion for that app, and when we implemented the seasonal icon, we did not implement any other changes. So it's important to keep in mind that when you're doing A/B testing, it's important to isolate the variables that you're testing. And one of the challenges that a lot of people have is they change a lot of different things, and then they don't know which element of the page caused a positive or negative result. So this was an isolated test for that icon only. It took into consideration any lift or decline in seasonality for the category of apps in particular that we were looking at. And in this case, we were looking at organic conversion, but we did monitor conversion across any paid channels the app was working with through their attribution tool. And when we implemented this, we also saw improvements in conversion, but those improvements were different across every channel because user behavior is different in every channel. Generally, when we're doing A/B tests or we're deploying new things in the store, we always advise monitoring your search and browse conversion separately. We also advise monitoring conversion in each of your paid channels once you deploy separately to make sure you understand how that creative is affecting a channel by channel level.
Right, and Kelly's asking, for long tail keywords, should you separate them by commas? E.g., if you want to rank for baby clothes and baby clothing, should it be baby, comma, clothes, comma, clothing? Or should it be baby clothes, comma, baby clothing?
Yeah, so we do not advise targeting phrases in Apple's keyword field. It will not help you rank for the phrase. It does not give you any extra juice. Apple, in their algorithm, is a merchandising algorithm. They're going to understand when you target keywords that there may be related terms that they could experiment with. And that's one of the reasons why when you're optimizing and you release an optimization, it's important to let Apple fully index you for a few weeks, because they need to crawl that metadata and run all of those experiments after you deploy.
So, right, got it. So you would go for just baby, comma, clothes, comma, clothing.
Correct.
Yeah, got it. And what tools do you use to look at App Store and Google Play trends for keywords?
So we have our own technology called DataCube that we use, and some people, we sell it as a SaaS technology. We use it for ASO, and it's a machine learning technology that aggregates billions of data points from the App Store and Play Store, and in some ways reverse engineers those data points to get the information that we're using for optimization. So we use our own tech for that, for many of the reasons that I outlined in my presentation, because there are some fairly glaring errors when you dig into the data that some of these other tools are using.
And Mirella is asking, why would keywords from ASA that drive a high volume of installs not be suitable for ASO? After all, a high install rate shows the app is relevant for that keyword.
So there are a few factors within ASA that are different from ASO and how it works. When you're thinking about ASA and you're looking at popularity scores, which is what I was talking about earlier, a popularity score that Apple provides is good for about a 24-hour period of time, and then it is updated. And so there are keywords that might have a lot of volume for a period of time that after a day or a week will not have the same volume. And with ASO, you want to be sure that you're using the right time frame of data when you're evaluating a trend to commit to a keyword, to putting in your organic optimization. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when you're running an SEM campaign, with a paid search campaign, you're looking at one keyword at a time. You target the keyword, you rank for the keyword. When you're looking at ASO and you're thinking about ASO in the context of how Apple and Google index you like an e-commerce engine, Apple and Google are considering how keywords are related to one another and how the metadata that you input may imply they should experiment with you on other related keywords as they crawl your app. If you're looking at SEM and you're looking at a strategy where you're looking at one keyword at a time, you're not looking at the relationships between keywords. You're not looking at how, from an organic standpoint, Apple may have run or Google may have run experiments with you on keywords beyond the ones that you target, and where that low-hanging fruit might be to get a broader optimization. So it's really just a strategy of broad optimization versus narrow optimization, and a difference in the way that you might achieve success on a search ads campaign versus the way Apple or Google's organic algorithm crawls you, and how you may need to adapt for that.
Someone is asking, how often should you be updating creatives, keywords, descriptions? If you're getting good conversion with your existing setup, should you wait to change it or wait till it's exhausted?
So when you say keywords in your description or creatives, or keywords in your creatives, which did you mean?
I think they're saying, how often should we be updating creatives, keywords, descriptions? Probably the whole lot.
Got it. Okay. So generally speaking, with any written metadata, so keywords, descriptions, titles, things that are written in the App Store, Apple and Google take about 3 to 4 weeks to crawl you. And so you don't want to update more frequently than that, because instead of causing Apple and Google to learn more about your app, if you kind of interrupt the crawl that was previously going on, you're almost like hitting the reset button, telling them to restart their learning. So give it about 3 to 4 weeks, then do your next update. And for conversion optimization, changes, we generally advise, run the test until it reaches statistical significance, deploy it, and then give the creative, at least 7 to 10 days in the store, deployed to 100% of your traffic, to evaluate how it's converting against 100% of your traffic and how it's converting against all channels. If you see leading indicators that are very positive, that's a good sign. If for some reason you see something that's negative, because not every test is perfect, you can always pull it back a little bit earlier or make additional changes. But leave it in there for several days to evaluate how it's performing before you run the next A/B test.
Got it. And we had someone yesterday actually was talking about automation for ASO, and someone's asking about that. How much of this can be automated?
So when you're thinking about running A/B tests purely for creative, it's possible to line up a number of variants of screenshots and A/B test different screenshot variants in order, and you could automate loading those in if you wanted to. The problem is there's a lot of analysis that comes into play when you are running A/B testing, right? Because A/B testing and ASO in general involves looking at how all of the channels that you're using and how search and browse activities separately may respond to what you're putting live in the store. And it's necessary not only to automate the results from a test that it's necessary not only to evaluate the results of the test that you're running, but it's also necessary to evaluate the final results once you put it live in the store on a channel by channel basis. There's a lot of work that goes on there, and it's to your advantage to be looking at the data, because looking at the data helps you understand how the App Store and Play Store algorithms work and how it's impacting your performance in every channel when you do these kinds of deployments. On the keyword and metadata side, you know, automation, you know, frankly, it's not something we would recommend because you're not getting exposed to what's working and not working. And a lot of the data that you get from analyzing the results of an optimization yourself can actually help you understand how to apply that knowledge to, you know, creatives and other channels, understanding what keywords are working best, understanding how Apple and Google and their merchandising process is working for your app. And you just don't want to miss out on that level of detail.
Got it. Okay. I think we'll do one more question. There's maybe what we can do, Dave. While you're here, what's the best way? People still have questions. Is there a good way to follow up with you? I think we shared the link to your site, GummyCube, and what's the best way of sort of staying up to date? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach us on Twitter. Our handle's GummyCube. We're also GummyCube on LinkedIn. We have a great blog at gummycube.com where we post news and analysis and content every day, just like this. You can also email me directly. So if you want to shoot me an email, I'm just Dave at gummycube.com, or you can reach our biz dev team at info@gummycube.com, and someone will definitely get back to you.
great. And okay, so let's just do one more question then. So, and I think for the others, sorry we didn't get around to that, guys. We will maybe you can drop Dave a line. Someone's asking for a new app? What are the sort of main things that would help them in terms of App Store optimization?
So when you're launching a new app in the store, it's important to understand first how your features align with what people are searching for in the store. And when you're building your initial creatives, indeed, when you're even thinking about how you might describe those features in the menus of the app itself, it's important to create that alignment because it will help your indexation in the store. It will get you better click-through rates when you go out into the store because you're providing something that a user might find more recognizable instantly. And it will also perhaps help engagement in your app because users will know where to go and what to look for. That's the first thing. The other thing that I always tell people who are launching new apps in the store is that your creatives, your icons, the way you're describing the app, it not only has to be aligned with the way people are searching, but it has to be obvious to end users. One of the things that I've noticed with a lot of new apps that we work with is they have what I call Facebook disease, where they might have a logo that they want to use, like the simple F over the blue background. But unless you're already a brand, no one is going to know what that is. And so for new apps in the store, it's better to use creative that evokes your most important feature, because when you're able to do that, you get higher conversion. You're more obvious to users who may not be likely to research, who may likely not research, but they would respond very quickly if they see something directly relative to them right in the search result.
Great, thanks, Dave. Well, I wish, we could take a few more, but I think everyone's got your contacts, and we do actually, everyone should have access to the app as well. We've got a kind of little forum going on, so I'll maybe try and see if we can get you on there, Dave. I had a speaker from LinkedIn who also had some questions we couldn't get to, and they went on the forum and answered some, so I'll get the team to maybe set that up. So if everyone with more questions, maybe we can keep them going on the forum or contact Dave directly. I want to say a big thanks to Dave for taking part, and really appreciate sharing all your ASO knowledge bombs with us today.
No worries. I'm glad I was able to be here, and apologize for some of those early technical glitches. I promise there will be a new MacBook in my future.
Great. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. And next up, we are talking how to increase app engagement using email marketing. Got one of the leading product guys at one of the big platforms. It's got some really good material on that. Email's a really important channel for app engagement, so I hope you can join us.